Hey, this is Josh with Trilobyte Studios,
And this is Carl.
and we're back together. Yay!
Hooray!
Today we are looking at a recent article about the resurrection of the Thylacine,
Right.
also known as the Tasmanian tiger. Now, we covered this previously in one of our videos about resurrecting extinct species, but with this reoccurring paper, we decided to kind of re-examine our thoughts on it.
Right.
So, Carl, why don't you start us off?
Sure. The first thing that I noticed as I'm reading through the article is there's a lot of things that I disagree with, but there's also some things that I genuinely do agree with. Mostly disagree, though. And first of all, I want to point out the language that's being used in this article, because I think that language is very important. It's words have different meanings. You know, you have to use the right word at the right time. Otherwise, you might convey a different meaning. And the terminology that they've been using is de-extinction. I think that's a bit of a misnomer because there is no such thing as de-extinction, right? When something is extinct, it is gone. It is extinct. You cannot resurrect it. It's never going to be the same. You're not making it unextinct anymore. You're just making a copy. You know, it's or not even a copy. You're just making a different version. It's like a different firmware, a different software. It's like version 2.0 almost.
All right. So now, I know de-extinction has been a term for many projects like the passenger pigeon, the mammoth, and now the thylacine. And like you said, I have some problems with the article, but also I can see some potentials with other animals that are still alive.
Yeah.
Using that
Using this technology
for it, because they
highlight
references of marsupial conservation with artificial pouches, which now allows for the
other
development
marsupial conservation
of harder to breed animals in a more clinical way,
like Tasmanian devils and kangaroos and any
wallabies
and wombats and any other marsupial that you can think of. So I see the aid in helping, but what I disagree with is that I feel like as I'm reading through the article, I read through like the questions and the answers, and it almost seemed like the whole team behind this project had a very holier than thou type attitude towards it. Like, look at how good we are for bringing back what these other people messed up. And I think that that's another misconception, because again, it's like you can never get back to what you had. You start with, it's like it's making a copy. It's not making it's not making the original. It's a reproduction.
You know what? When I read the article, the only thing that went through my head when I was getting to the parts where it was explaining how it wants to try with, if the thylacine succeeds, they want to try with other animals, is the line from the first Jurassic Park with Ian Malcolm going, you slapped on a plastic lunchbox and now you're selling it.
Yeah.
You didn't stop and said, is this actually an ethical thing to do? And yes, I understand that it would probably benefit the ecological area, but because the thylacine is from Tasmanian, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, it was on mainland Australia as well, but it went extinct.
But it went extinct long before.
Right, long before even Europeans got there.
Yeah, so
on Australia.
The thylacine that they're talking about is the Tasmanian thylacine.
Yes.
So, since the Tasmanian devil has basically taken that role, is it really worth kicking the thylacine back into that ecosystem when the Tasmanian devil has kind of already filled the niche?
I mean, yeah, and that's what they talk about in the article a little bit too. It's just, I'm reading through it as we go right now, and they talk about what happens when an ecosystem becomes unbalanced. Okay, what happens when you introduce an animal that's been gone for almost 100 years now? 1936 was the official extinction date,
Yeah.
and that was with the ones in zoos, not even the wild ones. So we're talking like, what was it, 1934, 1935,
I
1933?
don't remember the exact story, but I know some farmer.
Shot the last one
in
the wild. So you're introducing an animal back into an environment that has been gone for 100 years, that the other animals and the other resources in that habitat, in that environment, have not been exposed to for 100 years. They've already started to do what nature does, which is adapt to it. Yeah, exactly. They've already started to adapt and evolve and to fill those roles and to create a new ecosystem void of that particular animal. So now it's basically like reintroducing an invasive species.
Well, it's almost a parallel to the Yellowstone wolf thing, where they introduced wolves to Yellowstone, and they revitalized the environment. However, unlike that, where you're basically taking wolves from like Alaska or Canada and just bringing them to a new area.
Yeah, they're still wolves.
You're basically taking an animal, like you said, that hasn't been in the environment for over 100 years or more, and throwing it into the forest.
Yeah.
All the thylacines that will be produced would be a captive population. There's no real way to teach it, this is how a thylacine hunts. This is how you, do all this thing. Now, with lions and stuff like that in captivity, there's still that essence of that makeup in their DNA. So it could be, they just kind of figure it out as they go. But I highly doubt introducing a new species or reintroducing the species to the wild is a good idea.
I agree with that.
Because it's one of those things. It's like, I seen the thylacine in the Smithsonian, in the animal hall. When you look at it and you read the stories, you feel like, we did something wrong. But if you can just go to a lab and go, oh crap, we killed one, and just pull out the next one, where's the ethical emotion behind that?
Yeah, there's no impact.
It's basically just another product of
you've taken
biotechnology.
Well, you've taken an animal and turned it into a commodity.
Yeah, basically, it basically would just be like, oh, we have an order for 4 more thylacines. Okay, let's just get it out.
Get the oven fired up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand that too, but I think the that's arguing from like a moral perspective, like a heartfelt perspective. But even arguing from like a scientific perspective, getting back to that whole ecological niche, things are already starting to fill that void. I don't understand what the point is. It's not like the ecosystem has collapsed since the extinction of the thylacine. The Tasmanian ecosystem, as far as I'm aware, is still thriving. And
I do believe there are like the Tasmanian devil is starting to show major disease problems.
Yeah, I know that.
Then you have the spotted quail. Pardon my pronunciation, but it's another carnivorous marsupial from Tasmania that I think is actually the closest related to the thylacine.
Oh, is that what you were talking about a little bit earlier?
Yeah, and I think they're also critically endangered. So, as for the human population in Tasmania, I know that's mostly on the northern coast, and the rest of it's more mountainous and open. So, who's to say there's not actually a thylacine already running around? We just never found it.
Yeah, that's a question too. It's entirely possible that they didn't go completely extinct, but
just because you don't see it doesn't mean it doesn't see you.
Going from the scientific perspective again, I think it's like like we talked about, there's nothing there to actually teach it. It'd be such a synthetic feeling animal. There's nothing it'd be very synthetic. It'd be very sterile. You're going to have to slowly introduce it to the environment. It's going to be years for this project to even get to where they want it to be. And the fact that they're thinking about reintroducing them into that environment now, where people have come in and have taken over. Let's be honest, people have come in and have taken over that environment, but the environment's already starting to adapt. It's already starting to do what nature does, and that's what's getting me about this. Like, you already messed it up once. Let's not mess it up again.
Or worse.
Now,
here's my question. In order to reintroduce these animals to the wild, what would they feed them?
That's a good question.
Because if they're feeding them like sheep or goats, that's the reason why they got in trouble the first time.
Yeah, they're going to start eating the sheep and goats.
Farmers were thinking they were attacking their livestock, which they probably did grab a lamb or two, but also feral dogs probably caused a lot of that problem.
They just got the blame for it because they looked freaky.
Well, you have British settlers that, heard stories about tigers, and now here's a wolf-like creature with tiger stripes.
Yeah, with tiger stripes.
Which is why they call it the thing.
And a jaw that's like, bigger than... Yeah,
it
can open it like...
Open
what is it, like almost...
I think like 100 degrees.
It's like 100 degrees, 110 degrees.
Yeah, they have a very large gape. But no, I'm saying if we were to feed them from a captivity perspective, what are you going to feed them?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like you can give them livestock meat, because then they're going to know, hey, a cow is easy
pickings.
Either easy pickings, or they're just going to be familiar with that.
Like, oh yeah, that's my food.
It's like, are they going to just throw wallabies at them? Which at that point, then it's like, where's the ethics in you just throwing wallabies at this, lab created animal?
Again, it's one of those things where there's so much gray area to it that the article doesn't cover, that I think is what really gets me and makes me very apprehensive about this. Something interesting about the article, though, they kind of alluded to when they think that they're going to have their first mammoth calves. They said 5 to 6 years from now, so 2022, and they're saying by like 2027, 2028 is when we're going to see mammoth calves, and I don't like that either.
No, the fact that we can now basically go, oh yeah, we can have that done by, X the date, whatever. And they were talking about thylacines or marsupials in general having a much shorter gestation period. So like within the next 5 to 6 years, even for that, they could have probably a thylacine produced. But they were talking about the thylacine being the first de-extinction animal, where I hate to break it to you, but we've done this with an ibex already, I think in the 90s.
Something like that.
And it lasted like a week or two.
Yeah.
Because they had like a heart defect or something.
Because it's an abomination. It's not.
No, it basically was a embryo from when the animal was alive. They got an embryo, put it in a storage freezer, and then when they put it into, I think like some other species of ibex or like a domestic goat. And yeah, when the thing was born, it had like a heart defect. So it wasn't natural. I think a natural birth with a surrogate mother. It's just that one just happened to be the only egg you had, and you wasted it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. This gives me weird vibes. It doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel right to do this after already messing it up. But that's arguing from a moral perspective, right? And I think that's what most of this argument has been, is from the moral side of the argument. I mean, we could talk about the scientific side a little bit more, but there's really not much we haven't covered. It's mostly ecological. I mean, we could also talk about the logistics, like you did with what are we going to feed it, where are you going to keep it, how long is it going to take to reintroduce, where do you reintroduce it, how do you reintroduce it? Do you introduce a whole population? Do you introduce 1 or 2 individuals? If you introduce a whole population, that's going to have a huge toll on the native populations, on the prey species. There's so many different little details that I'm sure they've thought about, but they don't mention here in the article, which makes me apprehensive.
My biggest problem with it is the fact that, like we said in the last video, with the mammoth resurrection, is that when you can just basically pop out another one after losing a species from a lab. It takes away the impact that society will have on extinction as a
it's a commodity now.
It basically is, well, we messed up, but we can just print another one. It's, there's no weight behind it.
Yeah.
And it's a huge toll on money.
It is a huge cost.
It's a huge cost on everything, which where are you going to finance? How are you going to finance that?
That's
it's a, just throwing the definition of extinction out the window.
Yeah, there is no such thing as extinction anymore.
If you succeed, yeah, I would love to see one, but where's the where's the fine line of, hey, we can do this with this species, but don't ever think you're going to see that one,
Right.
Because we were talking about earlier, it's like, so woolly mammoths and the thylacine, what could they possibly do next? I mean, where do you draw the line of that's not
that wasn't human,
that wasn't a animal that we should have brought back? That's something that could eventually lead to, and I'm sorry to say it, a Jurassic Park situation where you have an animal that's from extinction that's now wanting to rewrite the apex predator of whatever environment you released it into.
Well, see, I don't think that's going to happen, but arguing from the same side of like extinction should hurt, it also devalues evolution.
Because
it
you
devalues
can just basically
the processes.
Start over where something that took thousands or if not longer to get to, you're basically just jumping right in the deep end and with your feet running.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it devalues it. It takes it from being something that is a long process that takes a long amount of time, where animals and other species have adapted into their niches and into their roles, and that's how ecosystems work. It's taken that and it's thrown it out the window and said, this is how we think ecosystems work, and by damn it, this is how they are going to work. And that's not how nature actually works. Nature can adapt, nature can improvise, nature can overcome anything, I think, that we throw at it, anything that we do to it. Nature is always going to bounce back because of those processes that have served it so well for billions of years before we were even a blink in the eye.
How many asteroids have hit the planet
that
we know of?
A lot.
And how many ice ages? I mean, and yet we're still ticking.
Yep, we're still going.
So one last thing that I would like to cover is, did they say in the article, is the thylacine an actual keystone species? Now, keystone species, for you viewers, is an animal that if you remove it from the ecosystem, there's a significant impact, like the wolves from Yellowstone. When you remove wolves from Yellowstone, the elk population goes through the roof. It overgrazes areas and all this other stuff and causes really bad ecological disasters. But if you can remove a species and nothing changes, then at that point, that species doesn't need to be reintroduced at that point.
But again, even if you do remove that species, nature's going to start to work in. There's always highs and lows, right? You have a population boom of something. Well, now there's so much of that population that the environment can't sustain it.
Or something better comes along.
They all die off, or they go back to. They find their median. They find that intermittent. Like, okay, this is a weird example, right? But I keep fish. Okay, I think
you mentioned that before.
I have Malaysian trumpet snails in my tank because they're great little algae eaters. Here's what happens with the Malaysian trumpet snails. When I have a lot of algae in my tank, if I haven't been doing my water changes like I should be, I get busy, boom. I mean, that population just rockets through the roof. They eat all the algae, they make it look spotless, and then there's no more algae. So some of those Malaysian trumpet snails start to die off. Well, now there's more detritus in the water because there's decaying snails. The algae starts to bloom again. the snails start to eat the algae. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's a very periodical wave.
And now, after I've been doing this for a while,
you basically made an ecosystem.
The population has sustained itself to the point has stabilized to the point where I've got algae, a little bit of algae, but I've also got
enough snails
to keep it in check, but not let it get wild.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I think that even saying that something is a keystone species, I mean, keystone species have gone extinct before.
Yeah, but
and we still have environments.
Yeah, I understand that, but what I was getting at is if it's a keystone species, like with the wolves in Yellowstone, you would actually have a stronger argument to bring something back.
Yeah.
To try to stabilize it better or try to get it back to equilibrium than to remove a species and basically everything staying to maintain where it was with it.
Back to the status quo.
Yeah. That's what I was getting at.
Oh, okay.
So, is there anything you would like to add as a final thought on if the bringing back the Thylacine is gonna happen?
I mean, it's going to happen, right? This company has said that they're doing it, that we are going to do it, but I don't think it should be done. I think it is even if you're not religious. It spits in the face of the processes that give us these creatures to begin with, because now we think that we're above it. We're not above it.
Well, humans have been thinking they're above the natural ecosystem since,
yeah, but now we
dawn of humanity.
But now we think we're above it in a better way, and I'm going to explain why. Because in the 19th century, when people were hunting the thylacines, and when we were hunting these animals to extinction,
well, we've been doing it throughout human time.
Let's talk modernity.
I think what you mean is back then we didn't really know about it.
No.
But now, at the time you're talking about, we knew about it, but yet we're still doing it.
Sure. Okay. Well, whatever. 19th century, people are hunting these animals to extinction. They think they're above nature because they have firearms. They have the power over these creatures. They have the power to either let them live or make them die. And it's in a malicious way, right? Because they think that these animals are evil, and they think that they are a detriment. They think that they're a pest. They think that they are a burden onto human society. And now you're at the same point where we still think that we are above nature, but now we think we're doing it in a good way. Let me tell you what, it's not a good way. Anytime you think that you are above nature, anytime you think that you are above something, it's not good. Because now we're thinking about it like this. We're thinking, oh, well, we can fix all these problems with our technology. It was the same technology that started those problems, you know?
In the same way of thinking, too.
And the same way of thinking. That whole mentality of we're disconnected from nature, we don't really need nature, but we can manipulate nature however we want. So that's my final thoughts.
No, I think that's a good stopping point with this conversation, is that we are both in the agreement of, even though we don't like to see this occur, and we both have the same idea of this is a bad idea, it's going to happen whether we like it or not.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that humans are just going to have to, I guess, swallow a very large pill on, and find out the hard way is that some things are better left alone.
Yeah.
So this is Josh.
And this was Carl.
Signing off. Bye.